Yeah, good morning and welcome. Thanks very much to come into this session this morning. My name's Tom Eggleston. I'm CEO of ProofID. Great to be here at Identiverse again. This is, I think, the 6th year in the row that I've been at Identiverse, or CIS as it was before. So it's brilliant to come back here every year. I always really enjoy it. And it's really good this year as well that I get the opportunity to talk to you all on day one. Because last year I did a session on day 4, I think it was. I think, we all love identity, but by the end of 4 days of it, there was a bit of fatigue setting in. So it's great. Everyone's still really excited about identity at this time. So it's good. What I want to talk to you about today is how we at ProofID look at the identity security model and the various technologies that work together that you can be using to help protect the identities and the credentials for the individuals that work in your organizations, that interact with your organizations. And we call that the identity security maturity model, which is a bit of a mouthful. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about ProofID, who we are and what we do. So ProofID is an identity management specialist. We are integrators and a managed service organization. So we run identity solutions for our customers. We host them. So it's kind of enterprise technology with a sort of SaaS experience. And we're based in Colorado Springs, just outside of Denver, and also in Manchester in the UK. No prizes for guessing which office I'm based in. So yeah, I get to have a holiday as well this week, which is great. The 3 technology areas that we do at ProofID are access and authentication, identity governance and administration, and privileged access management. And those are the three technologies we're going to be talking about today. And taken together, I sort of think of those as the triangle of identity security. They all kind of link together. They're all a key part of how you actually protect your identities. So just setting a bit of context, we've probably all seen this stat before. It comes from the Verizon internet breaches report that they do every year, and I just think it's really profound, really. When we think about identity management, it's a really interesting sort of technology area because on the one hand, a lot of the technologies we work with have a sort of productivity angle. So if we're talking about SSO, single sign-on, that's a great tool for our end users, helps them work better. Helps us get our job done quicker, but it's also fundamentally important from a security perspective. And actually what this stat is saying is that 80% of hacking related breaches actually started along the line with compromised credentials. So one way or another, someone got hold of someone's identity, basically, and used that to instigate a breach. And that's, yeah, it's profound. And I think when you think about what we all do for a living with that in mind, we can see that identity is right at the forefront of the sort of security landscape, whilst also being a kind of a productivity tool. So if we actually break this down and look at it in a bit more detail, and actually also from the same report, and this is actually what actually the method that was used in all of the breaches, we can see right at the top of their use of stolen credentials. So right up at the top, that's where the vast majority of breaches came from. But there's more in here as well that are also related to identity. So phishing, in a way, that's related to identity management, trying to get people's credentials. Privilege abuse or misuse, so people doing things they shouldn't do or having privileges they shouldn't have, again, comes back to the management of identities and access. Pretexting is kind of a phishing kind of variant. Password dumper down at the bottom there. So there's a lot of these attack vectors, if you like, that are related ultimately to how we secure and look after our identities. My doof is working. There we are. Another one, different incidents. So again, denial of service. Well, I mean, we'd expect that. There's a lot of that, obviously, across the internet. But second in the list there, privilege misuse. Again, we can see this is where the identity angle plays into the total number of incidents. And this one's interesting. So who were the actual internal actors who did these bad things? And the slightly unpalatable answer is it's kind of you and me. It's all of us. It's everybody who works in the organization. So system admins at the top of the list. How many system admins have we got here today? There's probably quite a few. A few hands up. Yeah, bad people. We've got end users in there as well. Well, we know they're bad. But it's interesting as you go through. Doctor or nurses, that one was quite interesting to me. That's not what you expect. Managers, executives. So, I mean, and the point to take from this is it's not as simple as saying it's outsiders that are bad and insiders are good. The world's much more complicated than that. We've got good actors outside and we've got bad actors inside and vice versa. So actually trying to stay on top of that and actually provide a secure environment is tricky, but it's absolutely paramount. And any organization that's actually been affected by a breach, it can be absolutely devastating. We were talking to one of our customers recently. They're a retailer in the UK, right across the UK, and their business was taken down for a couple of days because of one of these kind of breaches. And you're talking tens of millions of dollars of impact to their business as a result of that. So it's a tricky problem. So, I mean, this is how we used to think about security, and we still have to do this. But there's this idea of inside good, outside bad, and we'll draw a line around it, and we'll protect, we'll stop things from the outside coming in, and everything will be good. And I suppose the message I'm trying to convey is actually that's still important. We still have to do that. But actually, the context is really important now. We're talking about identities, and there's a phrase probably people have been saying at CIS and Identiverse for a couple of years that identity is the new perimeter, and I think there's a lot of truth in that really, because the question we really need to be asking is not just are you on the inside or the outside, but it's who are you, what are you doing, why are you doing it, and where are you when you're doing it. All these different factors that come into play when we're actually looking to decide whether or not to process a particular transaction. So really, we're moving quite a long way sort of up the stack when we're thinking about security now. And I think that really brings identity management technologies that we're all working with every day right into the center of your overall security landscape. So the three sort of core technologies that we think are fundamental to provide a real secure environment for your identities are identity governance and administration, federation and multi-factor authentication, and privileged access management. So show of hands, who's doing all of these things? So quite a lot of you. Not everyone. And this is what we find actually is when we talk to customers, that a lot of customers will go quite deep on some areas and not invest as heavily in others, and that's just life. But it's really important to understand, and in our view, if you're not doing all three of these, then in a way you're not really doing security. You might be doing something else, but you're not necessarily really doing security. So this session is relatively high level. We're not going to be having any curly brackets in this session, but what I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about what all of these technologies are for anyone in the audience that's not really familiar with them. And the way I like to do that is to try and bring it into the real world. So think of some of the real world analogs for what's actually going on with these different technologies, because that can help us understand why they're important. So what I'm going to do is slightly tortured analogy of what actually happened in my journey from the UK to the USA this week, because some of the things that happened are actually very similar to the way we need to think about protecting our identities. So to start with, the first thing, if you're, I mean, most of the audience here probably are from the US, have probably never heard of an ESTA, but the first thing you have to do if you want to travel from the UK to the US is you have to apply for what's called an ESTA, which is it's like a visa. It isn't a visa, but it's that kind of thing. So we have to go through an application process to say who we are. Someone in the US government has to look at that request and make a decision as to whether or not, yeah, we're going to allow this person, we're going to authorize this person to enter the United States for a period of time. And that happens before you travel. It has to happen, I think, 72 hours before you travel. Otherwise, you find yourself stuck at Heathrow, which is not what anybody wants. We go through this process of almost pre-provisioning access. So before I get to the US, it's already been decided that I'm going to be authorized to come into the country. And that's good for a certain period of time. So that is a great example of identity governance and administration. So there's two things that have happened there. We've had an application for some access, and somebody who is properly authorized has looked at that request and has taken a decision based on the available information whether or not we should grant that access, and has set a time limit for that access after which it needs to be reviewed again. So in the case of an ESTA, it's 2 years. So that's the governance piece. We can just leave it all down to be fully automated, but in a lot of cases we need a human to look at this as well and actually say, yeah, we're going to actually mindfully grant this access, and then when the time's up, we'll re-review it. And if nothing happens, we'll take the access away. So that's the governance piece. The administration piece is actually there's a record created in the US. They don't particularly know me, but there's a record saying that when I show up to ask to come into the country, they know that there's a record waiting for me and I've been pre-approved. And that's like provisioning. That's identity provisioning. So if you think about what happens when a new user joins your organization and needs to have access to an application, maybe Office 365 is a good example, there needs to be some kind of a process to determine whether this individual needs access to that system. That may be fully automated. There may be a governance step where someone has to actually take a decision to approve it. Then we grant that access and we'll actually go and provision an identity record in the application, so in Office 365 for a period of time until it needs to be reviewed. That's identity governance and administration. Really boils down to deciding or making sure that the right people have the right access to the right systems according to their role. So anyway, I've applied for my ESTA. They approved it. That's great. So I can get on the plane. So the next thing happens, fly from Manchester, actually it was, to Washington, and then I have to show my passport when I want to actually come into the country. And I think it's quite interesting to think about what's really going on. We all carry these passports around and no one really thinks about what it is. But it's actually federation is what's going on there. So, when I come to log in, sorry, to enter the country, it's not like the border guy knows who I am. He's never seen me before. Okay, there's a system that says Tom Eggleston has an ESTA approved, but they don't really know anything about me, and they have no way of knowing that I am who I say I am. So what I have to do is show my passport, which is really just a token, if you think about it. And the guy on border security, he trusts it, which is quite amazing, really, when you think about it. I just show this book and he says, yeah, you're good, you can come in. What's really happening, though, is there is a trust relationship set up between the United States and the United Kingdom. We have clever systems of cryptography, which shows that the passport hasn't been forged, which somehow they can check. Really what they're saying is they're delegating the authentication back to the United Kingdom government. They're saying, okay, if you have proved to the satisfaction of the United Kingdom government that you are who you say you are, and they've given you this token, which is valid for however long it's valid, and we trust them, and because I can prove via cryptography that it's not a fake, I'm going to let you in. And by the way, you've got an account already because of your ESTA. So, sound familiar? I mean, that's SAML, basically, or OpenID Connect. That's what's going on there. We're doing a federated authentication to get into the country. There's some quite crucial things about that. The other way of doing that would be the United States government would need to retain records about everyone from the United Kingdom and would have to be able to authenticate me. I don't really want that to happen. That doesn't seem like a good system. It doesn't seem very scalable. And I'm sure the other way around, you probably don't want that either. So actually, what it means is we're able to authenticate and prove who I am without actually having to have any credentials or personal information stored in the United States. And that's a bit like saying Office 365 doesn't need to know my password. And this is where it starts to really become about security as well as authentication, because we're just transmitting a token. I've just got a passport that's trusted. I don't need to send a password or have credentials. So when we think about how this plays out with our Office 365 scenario, I've had my account provisioned. The first day I join the organization, I want to go and log in. I go to Office 365, I type in my email address, and it says, oh, you're from ProofID. I know ProofID, I trust ProofID. Go and authenticate over there and get a token. So I go and do that. I send my password locally. My password is only held in one place, which is ProofID's Active Directory. Checks out, I get my token. They trust it because of certificates and all that clever stuff that I don't fully get. And then they let me in. I have a session in Office 365. So, you know, it's really important. We've determined only the right, you know, who has access to what and why, and we make sure that we don't need to store a password in that application, meaning that Office 365 or any other applications you've got are no longer a hacking target, and really improving the overall security posture. So those two things really, really play together. Privileged access management, this is where the analogy gets a bit, I'm stretching it, but let's go with it. So, so I got to my hotel, and I check into the hotel, and they give me my key. And of course, it's not really a key. It's not a key to turn in the lock. It's actually, you know, there's a code that's put into the key card, and that allows me, gives me privileged access to my room for 4 days. And during that time, I can come and go from that room as I please. When I leave, they're going to rotate that code. My key is going to be no good to anyone. So I can come back on the 5th day and try and get in, and it's not going to let me in because the codes have completely changed. Somebody else has a new token which is going to get them into that room. So, you know, that's kind of what we're doing with privileged access management as well, but we're doing that for your administrative or other privileged accounts that you have across the organization, of which there are loads, by the way. And why this is important is you can secure everything all you like with your IGA and your federation and multi-factor authentication. But if someone gets hold of one of your admin credentials for any of your systems, for your Active Directory or your federation system or whatever it is, then really all bets are off. You know, and actually everything is compromised. So your overall security posture is completely compromised if you're not securing those credentials. Does that all make sense? I'm happy to take questions as we go, or can save it for the end. So those are the 3 technologies and a slightly tortured analogy, but you know, hopefully it makes sense. And these all work together. So you know, this is, as I say, this is what we call this sort of triangle of identity security. And there's 3 points on the triangle being access, authentication, IGA, and privilege. And I think the key message is if you're not doing all 3, then it's not really a true security solution. So let's just think that through. So maybe you have, you know, a federation and authentication system. So you're doing all federated authentication and SSO. Great, good one. But you're not doing IGA. So you're not really having any strong governance over who's got an account in your Active Directory. You're not necessarily removing access when somebody leaves the organization. Maybe someone changes role and they need to come out of a particular group, and that's maybe not happening in an automated or controlled way. So if you're not actually controlling the underlying system to which your federation platform is authenticating, you're arguably making things worse. You know, you're giving SSO to a whole bunch of people that shouldn't have access because we're not controlling the access in our underlying systems properly. And that works the other way around as well. So if we think about, maybe we're doing identity governance and administration, so we are provisioning accounts based on people's roles, we are creating accounts, but if we're not also doing federated authentication, then those credentials need to, well, maybe in an LDAP server, but in a lot of cases, you're going to have to be pushing credentials into your connected applications as well, passwords into all of your applications, which is, you know, to the point about making them attractive as a kind of a hacking target, not what you want to do. We don't want to be sending passwords when we authenticate. We want to be sending tokens. So, you know, both way round, you need to be doing both of those things to be truly secure. Like we said, with privilege, if you're not doing privileged access management, you kind of undermine all of that security. But the other way around as well, if you're going to have a privileged access management system and a secure vault, you really need to be locking that thing down with identity governance and administration. So only the people who need it, who've got the right roles, should be able to access the secure vault and check credentials in and out. And equally, for the same reason, you want to be doing federated secure authentication, really with multi-factor authentication as well, into your privilege access management system. So it's really, this is, I mean, it's not a virtuous circle, what is it? A virtuous triangle, there we go, of technologies that work together to provide a real secure environment. So we did a quick show of hands earlier. So there's quite a few people in the room that are kind of doing all of these. There's always a lot of people that don't put up their hands, so I'm going to, give an extra 20% of people. But you can do these to different levels. You can be really going for it with your SSO and just dipping your toe in the water of privilege, or vice versa, different combinations. So we thought about that at ProofID, and we thought actually we need to have a way to actually help our customers and other people in the community actually assess where are they in all of these three disciplines, so they can understand where potentially need to focus or invest to actually tighten things up a little bit. So that's where we came up with the identity security model, maturity model for identity security, which is really a series of questions that you can ask yourself about your own organizations to have a kind of a health rating in each one of these areas. And so what I want to do with the second part of this talk is just talk through the questions that you can go away and ask yourself about your own organization and what you're doing, and that will help you peg yourself on whichever level you're at. So starting with identity governance and administration. First question, is your identity provisioning automated? So are you doing manual processes? I mean, hands up in the organization whose organization still have manual processes for provisioning. Yeah, I mean, it happens quite a lot, and quite often you'll have some automation and some systems being manually provisioned as well. There's nothing per se wrong with doing it manually, other than humans are involved, which is always a bad thing, because humans make mistakes. And so if your process relies on when somebody's leaving the organization, the manager has to tell someone in IT that they've gone, that's a process that's probably going to break. And what we find is that organizations tend to be much better at giving out access than taking it away. So striving for automation across the board is really important. Is your identity data driven by HR? I could say HRs or multiple authoritative sources, because there's lots of organizations out there that might have different categories of users other than just staff. So if you're a university, maybe students as well. But the key point here is your identity data driven by an authoritative source of some description, a single point of truth, your system of record. And why this is important is because the people that are managing your identity system probably not the right people to know whether or not anybody should have access. So thinking about HR, we want to drive this based upon what someone's job is. We want to know when they start, when they leave, what their job is, and use those as the triggers to actually make automated provisioning decisions. Again, if we're not doing that, there's humans involved, or possibly the wrong people involved who don't necessarily know. So driving from an authoritative source is key. Are all or most of your applications connected to your provisioning system? So I don't say all, because there's definitely an 80-20 thing here. If you're in an organization that has a lot of, maybe applications that are used by a particular department or have been developed internally for a particular purpose and have 20 users, you maybe don't want to invest the time to actually fully automate those. However, I would say you do want to strive to have the vast majority of your applications participating in an automated identity provisioning and governance system. Because wherever you don't have that automation, we have the potential for mistakes. So what happens when users leave? This is interesting. I was doing a version of this talk the other day, and one of the ladies in the audience, she put a kind of hand over her mouth when we got to this bit, and it turned out that they had like 100,000 accounts in their organization for people that no longer required them, and it just hadn't been cleaned up right. And that's a significant organization. When users leave, this sounds really obvious, but you need to take away their access or do something. And it doesn't always happen. One of the first things we find when we go into to see customers is we'll run a report and say, well, these are all the users you know about, but what about all of these? And it can be quite shocking because usually there's quite a lot of unmanaged or accounts that aren't necessarily known about. So you need to be doing something kind of mindful when users leave. Disable, delete in 90 days, something. Do you manage access through RBAC, role-based access control? So what we're saying here is, depending what your role is in the organization or roles, that's what should confer access. You should get access from what your role is. Many organizations have this kind of what I call sort of like the shopping basket approach. So if you've been in an organization for 10 years, there's a good chance you've got access to everything because you've changed jobs a couple of times, you've been on projects, you maybe just fancied access to something and you harangued the system owner. And as I said, people are very good at giving access, we're not very good at taking it away. We see this a lot. And the way to kind of cut through this is to tie everything back to roles. So if you get a new job, new role, maybe you're going to become a salesperson, you should have access to Salesforce. That should come from the role that you've got of being a salesperson. And when you change and you go into sales engineering or whatever, a different role, you no longer have that role, your access should be removed. And that way we can always stay on top at any one time of who's got access to what. Sure.
On your third bullet, actually 2 questions. So you say that are all applications connected to your provisioning
Yep.
system? Why is that needed, especially if apps are moving away from, if it's federated access?
Okay, so the question is, so I'll just repeat it in case people can't hear. Why is it necessary to have all applications connected to your provisioning system, especially in a federated world? So it's a really good question. Federation is something that happens at the point of authentication, and you can do just-in-time provisioning for certain kinds of applications. And just-in-time provisioning means the first time someone authenticates, go and create an account for them. And that's fine for certain applications. So maybe your wiki, something that's not really isn't something that you're too worried about from a governance perspective. The big problem with it is, though, how would you do just-in-time deprovisioning? There is no deprovisioning event. There is no, that's the thing. We can do just-in-time provisioning because there is an event when someone logs in. When someone leaves, there is an absence of an event. So you can never take that account away in an automated way. So unless you're comfortable with the number of users in a system growing over time, and of course you can do things like show me everyone that hasn't logged in for 6 months and disable their accounts. But you can create a big buildup of access that you don't need. So for certain applications, I think you're absolutely right. Go with federation and just in time, and that's a really efficient way of doing provisioning quickly for applications that you don't care about that much. But for anything where it holds data and has a higher kind of security profile, you need to be sort of actually automating not just the provisioning, but it's the deprovisioning that's the most important thing. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. And the fifth bullet, RBAC, let's talk about ABAC now, right? The whole explosion.
Yeah.
So would you be touching on that?
It's kind of the same thing in a way. The key point is whether it's a role or whether you're requiring an attribute. It should be a piece of data that drives whether or not you have access. So do you have approvals workflows? So some of this, wherever possible, try and automate it if you can. But there are going to be, there's very much 80-20 rule here as well. So you may have certain applications that your business process is, yeah, we're going to automatically grant access, but I still need a human to approve it. Or you might have a lot of applications that you can't necessarily easily tie to a role. And to your point about role explosion, that is a real thing. We did a project once with, I think it was the National Air Traffic Service in the UK, and they had 6,000 users, and they said, we want you to tell us how many roles you've got. And we came back and said, well, you've got more than 6,000. Because that's how it goes. And it just shows it can be meaningless. You need to cap your roles at a sensible number, 20, 30 roles. And then everything else, well, you can just leave that to self-service and just have approvals workflows. We don't necessarily need to fully automate everything. Some of it can be, if you need something, go and ask for it. And that means we don't need to disappear down the rabbit hole of trying to find every single role in the organization. Can you regularly verify who has access to what? So I'm talking here about certification or attestation. Auditors love this. They're going to want you to do this all the time. And it's because, yeah, we can have, the system can automatically provision and deprovision, but can it pick up when there's been an error or someone's status hasn't been changed in the data, or if you haven't got fully automated processes, maybe if the human piece hasn't been done right. So being able to actually, on a regular basis, go back to the application owner or the managers or whoever the right person is within the organization and say, I need you now to actually go ahead and verify that these people who've got access to your application still need it. And if not, we need to do something about it. But having the ability to do that process, particularly in regulated industries, is really fundamental. What's your audit trail like? Again, so this is for auditors, but it's the ability to not just say what access someone has got, but how did they get it? If someone needs to ask you that question, you need to be able to say, well, it's because so-and-so approved this role and this application came from self-service, and to be the ability to build up a kind of audit trail over time of how someone got all their access. And finally, this is something we see a lot. Are you using commercial off-the-shelf software or homegrown? Nothing wrong with homegrown software, and particularly in this provisioning area, it can be really attractive on the face of it because you can design a system that's 100% aligned to your business processes. However, what we see over time is that organizations that build their own end up with an application with 500,000 lines of code that's been developed by one or two people that have left the organization or want to retire. It tends to be you end up with a system with business processes, quite often esoteric business processes actually hard-coded into the code somewhere, and you have a real management and maintenance problem, which becomes over time worse and worse. So, in the end, although it's attractive sometimes to build your own, particularly in this area where it's relating to access, my view is it's better to try and take something off the shelf and to try and work your business to fit in with what the software does rather than the other way. You may take a different view, but we see this a lot where we have to kind of swap out homegrown systems for those reasons. So that's identity governance and administration, and I suspect all of you are doing some of that, and some of you are doing all of that. But I kind of imagine that there's a different sort of variety of where people are on each of these. So with access and authentication, so do you provide separate usernames and passwords for different applications? How many people have applications with different usernames and passwords across the estate that people have to remember? Yeah, so it's a clue really that probably you haven't got SSO or federation for those systems. Plus lots of different usernames and passwords. People have to write them down, remember them. It's not great. Do you log in directly to each application? So it's kind of the same question actually. Or are we going through a central federation server? Do you have an SSO system? Have you deployed single sign-on? And to what extent is it across all of your applications? And this is an interesting one. Is it a federated SSO system or not? Because there are quite a lot of applications out there that say they're single sign-on, and they are, but they're not all the same. So password replay, password vaulting, whatever you want to call it, that basically works by the first time you go to a website. The system's going to watch you log in, it's going to store your credentials, and next time you go back to that website, it's going to replay them and log you in automatically. So great for users. In my opinion, it's not security technology. So if you're doing that, brilliant. That's good for productivity, but don't think that you're doing security. What you want to be doing is federated SSO tokens. We're using recognized standards, so SAML, OpenID Connect are the key ones there. There are some other systems out there that don't use standards. You're going to find integration difficult if you're doing that, and that where integration is difficult, that gives you a problem with reach across the estate. So you want things to be standards based so that they're easy to integrate and you can incorporate all of your applications. Multi-factor authentication. First question, do you have it? Are you using it? We still have a lot of customers that don't have multi-factor authentication, which you know, in terms of what it can offer in terms of protection against compromised credentials always surprises me. Particularly in a federated model where everything is, you know, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. If you're having a central authentication directory, having that ability to do an extra factor of authentication is fundamental, very much, you know, for your more important applications. Saved my bacon more than once when I've nearly got phished. If you have multi-factor authentication, can you make adaptive decisions? So the best way to sort of wind your user community up and turn them against you is to implement multi-factor authentication and require it for every login for every application across the board. And if you want to force your users to start using Dropbox to exchange data, that's probably a good way to go. So, you know, thinking back to security and productivity, this is one of those areas where, you know, you're naturally adding a bit of friction into the authentication. You're making things a little bit harder for your users. And what we really want to do is make that appropriate to the risk of what's going on when someone's authenticating. So it's the ability to do simple rules like, if you're on site, you don't need to do multi-factor authentication. If you're coming from a network I don't know, then I do require you to do multi-factor authentication. If your GPS says that you're on site, then that's all good. If your GPS says you're off site, that's not so good. If you were in Washington 5 minutes ago and now you're trying to log in from China, that's problematic because I don't think you can get there that quickly. So it's the ability to look at the full context of an authentication, decide what the risk profile is, and then decide how to handle the authentication. Do we need to up the security on that particular transaction? And also, are you securing authentication to APIs? So I think, again, some organizations might have a bit of a blind spot with this, but an API really is just an application without a front end. And a lot of the technologies that we're talking about here are really relevant to this. Have you got APIs out there that are just using basic authentication? You know, there's other ways you can do this and you know, increase your security there, particularly with the proliferation of APIs that we're seeing. Okay, and finally, privileged access management. So, hands up who knows all the privileged accounts within your organization. Oh, that guy over there. You win a prize. No, this is really important because they're everywhere. You know, we all know about the obvious ones, your Active Directory administrator accounts. But, you know, if you've got a federation system that's authenticating against your Active Directory, somewhere in that system, there is an LDAP account with elevated privileges that has the ability to bind against that LDAP and authenticate users, as one example. Most applications, enterprise applications, need to talk to your back end in some way and will have privileged access. So actually knowing what all of these are is almost impossible unless, you know, you've got really great processes of documenting everything. So the ability to automatically discover, you know, as a one-time and an ongoing thing is absolutely fundamental, so you actually know where all your privileged accounts are. Are you auto-generating and rotating privileged passwords? So, you know, this is, once you've, we don't want the administrators to set their own passwords, and once they've used it, we probably want to change it. And the ability to automate that is fundamental, because where we're going with this is, we don't really want any of your humans to know what their passwords are, if possible, because if a human knows a password, then it could get out, you know, either be written on a piece of paper or some kind of social engineering or there's any manner of ways that passwords can be compromised. Are you storing all of your privileged accounts in a secure vault? So do you have a single central secure vault that users have to authenticate to, hopefully with multi-factor authentication and strong authentication, to actually go and check out credentials when they need to use them? You know, a lot of organizations might have a policy where individuals have to have their own password safe, but is there one for the organization that you can use centrally and bring everything together? Do your administrators know the passwords they use to log in? So, you know, similar kind of question. Again, point is, we don't want anybody to know passwords. Are you using multi-factor authentication? So when you're actually logging into your privileged, into your servers or whichever systems you're trying to secure, or actually when you're logging into the secure vault as well. It's really important, given that really you have got an awful lot of eggs in this particular basket, that we do everything we can to make it secure. Have you got an audit trail of privileged activity? You know, when you need it, can you show how did this particular access happen? Can you see what people are doing? And I think, you know, a lot of applications will have their own audit trail. But when it comes to correlating all of that to try and understand really what's gone on between different systems, if you've got some kind of a security incident or a breach, that's really, really difficult. So actually having a centralized audit trail, immutable audit trail that you know is accurate is really, really important. Can you detect unusual privileged activity? So maybe your users, usually the pattern is for a particular user, comes in on a Monday, wants to check its status on a couple of their servers, so checks out 2 or 3 credentials, goes and logs into the Linux servers and has a look around. What happens if that user on a Sunday evening at 5 minutes to midnight suddenly checks out 30 different credentials? It's probably not right. There's probably something not good going on there. We want the ability to actually be able to say, hang on, don't like the look of that, let's shut it down, let's do something. Maybe initiate a workflow or do something within the organization so that we can actually stop anything bad happening. And finally, don't forget your endpoints. So your desktops, laptops, all the systems that your end users have around the organization. Don't forget about them. It's not just servers. It's not just Active Directory. It's not just your Unix and Linux servers. It's everything in the organization. And a lot of breaches will start there actually with you know, software that's not properly configured or has vulnerabilities and so on. So actually controlling access across your endpoints is a really important part of the privilege picture. So those are the questions. Actually, if you go to proofid.com now, you can actually, there's a link on the homepage to an online questionnaire that's going to take you through those questions, and we'll produce a report which explains really in a bit more detail what I've talked about, but would also show you where you are, where your organization is against other peer organizations, and give you a sense of how you're doing in each area. So, you know, as an example, this organization is really good at identity governance and administration, pretty good at access and authentication, and is nowhere with privileged access. So, you know, what they would take from this is actually the key area for thinking about here to complete the identity security picture is around the privilege piece. And this is going to be a different answer for every organization, and I'm sure we've got some people in the room who are going to, you know, get 10 out of 10 on each area. But maybe not, and hopefully it's a useful tool to you that's going to help you assess where you are and think about how you plan your identity roadmap. So just to kind of recap, poor identity security, that's breaches. If you're not doing our identity security properly, it's going to lead to incidents. In ProofID's opinion, identity security is IGA plus PAM plus auth, and you need to do all 3. I mean, it says here you need to aim to do all 3. I'd be a bit stronger. You have to do all 3. And you have to do them all properly. So that's the question about how mature. You might be dipping your toe in, or you might be going the whole hog. So at ProofID, we work with 3 partners. We only work with 3 partners. It's kind of a best of breed approach, and what we do is we try and bring this all together so that we can offer a complete identity security solution. We're on the stand in the expo, so you can come and talk to us about how we integrate these 3 platforms. But we work with Ping Identity in the authentication and access space, IDEO in the identity governance and administration space, and Thycotic in the PAM area. We integrate it all together and offer it as a managed service. So, you know, feel free, please come and talk to us about it. You can actually do the survey on the stand as well. We've got iPads, so you can run through it there. So that's it. I've got 4 minutes and 30 seconds left for any questions. No questions, there we go.